So, Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is the most deluxe remaster ever to be made, and that comes with all the flaws with a remaster. Hey, I'm Croc and welcome to my snap-up review of Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, a review of less of the waffle and more of what actually matters within the game. So let's get into Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. So of course, Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is a remaster of Dead Rising, so pretty much it is Dead Rising again, all the bells and whistles are still here. Yes, and that means it's one for one Dead Rising, with a few changes here and there that in my opinion are all mainly very well done and all positive for the game. However, there is one thing which I do think is a bit of a negative, but before we go over the changes, I'll quickly review Dead Rising like as fast as I possibly can because I don't think that's what's important. You will probably know what Dead Rising is like, and for those who don't know, this is what Dead Rising is. You play and follow Frank West as he investigates a strange event that has taken place within Willamette, and choosing the Willamette Mall to investigate, he comes across a cast of characters and is thrown into a conspiracy, and he has to reveal the truth with the proof that he finds, as you know.
I've covered wars, you know.
No, he's a reporter. Obviously zombies are in the game and are extremely fun to beat up, and psychopaths act as bosses and are all super fun characters to fight and meet and just explore the game with. And the map being an all-time classic, the Willamette Mall, boy, it felt like returning home to a place that you haven't been to in years. Well, it has actually been years as well. And that's honestly the game of Dead Rising. You have a pretty simple setup with sort of a 3-day structure that has a time limit in place, so you can do basically what you want, but you're encouraged to follow the story and obviously save survivors to increase your level. Super simple setup and it's fun. Okay, that's enough about the base of Dead Rising. Let's actually get into the remaster and what it adds and changes. Now, when I went into the remaster and when it was revealed, there were 3 things that I really wanted the game to actually have and actually change mainly. And to me, these are the big 3 things that I wanted. These were better graphics, better combat, and better controls. And none of these were bad in the original game, but these were the 3 big things that I really wanted to change for this remaster, or even if a remake was made. These are the main things that I think needed to be changed and improved upon. And this remaster does do all 3 of these and then does some more, so I do think this is actually a successful remaster, especially in my eyes. The graphics honestly are gorgeous. They maintain that sort of old school style, the simple nature of Dead Rising, but they also brought it up to a modern standard with some beautiful textures and model work, and the game just looks gorgeous now. Sometimes I just found myself staring at the models of the different characters, like their faces and their skin, because of just how detailed they are. The RE engine is genuinely amazing at making models, and I think it's shown very clearly in Dead Rising, as I think this is probably the best game to utilize the models from the RE engine, especially in the food court, are beautiful, with ray tracing really helping to make the environments really feel alive throughout the day, and actually makes it feel like there is a day-night cycle there. In Dead Rising, you pretty much had day and night, and that was it. But in this game, you actually feel like there's morning, afternoon, midday, stuff like that, and that's really helped with ray tracing a lot. And with some good placements of many lights throughout the entire mall, it doesn't get too dark or too bright. It's very well done, and it does feel like they actually went in and really fine-tuned the lighting system in the game. The combat itself is improved a bit, with the ability to move and aim at the same time. Beautiful, I love it. This is a change that needed to happen, and overall the actual combat feels a bit more responsive to button presses. I feel like I can do the special moves a bit more easily compared to the original, and I think that's a big improvement, as it makes things like the final boss fight feel a lot easier. Now, a big thing that I've seen online is people worried about that maybe this might make the game too easy. And all I'm going to say is Dead Rising was already really easy, honestly, and it isn't meant to be hard or difficult to play, and removing the annoying controls just makes the game so much fun to play. And still, the zombies are annoying as hell. They still grab you like hell. The psychos still do a lot of damage if they hit you. Some of them do like 3 or 4 health points in a single hit, and the military still can stun lock you to death. The game still will kick your ass if you let it, but I feel like you're more equipped and able to better respond to the threat in the game now, so I think it's fine. Is it easier? I guess it is easier. The controls aren't as much as a wrestling match with it anymore, but to me, it feels more like the Resident Evil 4 remake. It feels like they really just streamline the controls and make the game overall more fun to actually engage with, and honestly, I'll probably play this remaster quite a lot doing the infinite mode. Animations, they all resemble the original games and actually keep that sort of charm and the goofiness of the original Dead Risings, where games were made sort of by hand. All the animations were made by hand, so they have that sort of weird look to them, but they all look really good and really fun to like just see. It's fun to swing a baseball bat around and see these really dramatic swings coming out, which a lot of game companies did back in the day, just to make it seem more like you were actually hitting something, because mocap wasn't as big back then. Also, Brad's running animation is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, so there's a good point for that. Is that wrong? Oh, it's a goofy ass run.
Sir, if you
And a very big addition to this game was the implementation of autosaves. And honestly, I love this, and it's such a simple system to be added, and it makes the game feel so much better. Now, a lot of people were scared, myself included, that this might break the game using bathrooms to save. Dead Rising, the way it's sort of structured, you have the 3-day cycle and you're meant to save every so often so you can go back if you need to. And the autosave is there just to basically have a fallback. So if you lose to a boss, it doesn't send you all the way back to your last save. It just sends you back to that last autosave, which is really nice. And it makes the game flow a bit better and honestly a lot less annoying to play. I get it, there's like a whole risk reward thing there with, oh, if I don't save this, but there's not really any risk with going to save, and there isn't really a reward for going for saving. You just save time. So having the autosave is nice, and I still fucked myself a few times. I lost quite a few survivors from an event which I didn't fulfill because I went into the safe room, which then it autosaved, and then I left the safe room, and then it autosaved again, and then I couldn't go back. I either had to go back 6 hours, or I just had to let it happen. So I had to let it happen because I couldn't be bothered. So yeah, I think that's fine. And the autosave does mean that if the game crashes, it won't fuck you like the original Dead Rising. Originally, when I played Dead Rising, the remaster on the 2016 one on PlayStation, the game crashed on me and I lost about 4 hours of progress because I completely forgot you had to manually save the game. So I think this is a really good change, and it means that you're not as stressed when the game crashes, and it's not like, oh, for fuck's sake, I have to completely redo the game. I think it's a fine change. I think obviously you might not save as much, which I didn't, but more towards the end I was hard saving a bit more because I went, oh yeah, I need to hard save. But honestly, I like the change. It's a good change. I think it makes the game less annoying to play and more approachable, especially for beginners who might forget to save as often as they should be doing. But yeah, I think it's good. All survivors are now voiced. This is an amazing addition, and honestly I didn't expect this from the remaster, and it's actually so nice, and it makes the game feel more alive, and all the characters that you're saving feel like characters. In the original game they weren't voiced, so they felt a bit boring and plain, but I really do like the voices. Otis as well, having a voice is so nice, as he's the one that you actually talk to the most because he's on the radio. And the AI for these survivors, while they say it's improved, it's definitely not like a significant improvement. The AI still get stuck on shit and they're dumb as hell. They'll fight entire groups of zombies with only their fists if you let them. They are still stupid and they will get themselves killed unless you really babysit them. So don't expect them to just sort of run around stuff really easily. They will sometimes get stuck or stun locked or just random stuff like that. So yeah, they are still stupid. They are a bit smarter than they were, but they are still stupid as hell. And another addition I really do love is the addition of all these new outfits that you get from the deluxe editions and stuff like that. They all look amazing, and the ability to change the music for the overall mall, I love this so much. These simple things make the game so much fun and enjoyable to actually return to and just dick about with, like different outfits and the music. I just love it. It's a nice little thing that Capcom added, and they didn't need to add this, but I really do appreciate it. And also the outfits all look really good, like just visually and like how well made they are. For example, the Nemesis suit looks amazing. They all look really good, and I highly encourage you, if you're buying this game, to actually buy the deluxe edition because there's a lot here and some really fun outfits and music that you can play with. And as I mentioned earlier, with the survivors all being voiced, let's talk the voice acting now. Alright, so I actually do overall quite like the voice changes quite a lot. I like most of the new voice actors of characters like Carlito, Isabella, Jesse. They all sound fine and honestly good enough and as good as their old counterparts. But two I'm a bit mixed on. Well, two I don't like. One I'm mixed on, and one I really don't like that much. Frank I'm a bit mixed on. Initially I didn't really like the sound of his voice, but he did grow on me throughout the entire game, and honestly I don't mind him and I wouldn't be opposed to him being the new voice of Frank. But sometimes he didn't really sound right, and he sounded like he wasn't sort of fit in the scene. Like he'd just sort of say something and I was like, that didn't sound right. It wouldn't sound like he would naturally respond like that. And honestly, they're the only times that I didn't like Frank's voice actor. Every other time I liked him. I think he sounded good, and I think he sounded like someone who would be called Frank and looks like Frank. And the one I didn't like was Brad. Brad's voice actor, he definitely needed to do a few more takes of his lines because some of these just do not sound right. The worst one is in the opening where he's screaming at all the survivors to run to the safe room. He needed to redo that, and the directors needed to redirect him a bit better because boy, it sounds terrible.
What in the hell are you people doing? Run! Quick, move! Get over here! Everyone, move this way! Quick, to the stairs! Move!
The voice actor is not bad. When he's just talking, he sounds fine, but when he has to do anything with some sort of emotion, it's pretty bad. And later on in the game, he actually gets a lot better, and it's spoilers, a certain scene with him when towards the end of the game and his character arc, he sounds really good, and I really do think this voice actor was actually good and could have done a really good job as Brad, but I feel like they rushed him a bit and they didn't really give him the chance to really sort of make a good voice for this character and actually performance as well. But other than that, I actually really like the voice cast. I think they all did good, and honestly, they were just as good as their old counterparts, and they did respect the characters a lot. Alright, and let's talk about the thing that some people were moaning about, the changes from censorship and stuff like that. Does it ruin the experience? No, grow up. It really isn't that big of a deal. The removal of the erotica genre for photos didn't change the game at all, except certain photos you wouldn't get as much PP from, but you get so much PP from photos now because they increased this that it doesn't matter. Genuinely, the erotica removal is a fine change to me. It doesn't impact the actual character of Dead Rising at all. So it's fine from me, and it just means that it discourages people from gooning as much. So yeah, it doesn't matter, really. And the changes to some psychos, specifically a couple, to change their voice lines to make them less problematic. One of them was quite racist, and they changed him to be less racist. Well, he's not really racist at all anymore. Do I think this is a big bad change? It doesn't really matter. Their characters are still intact and everything, so I think it's a fine change, and honestly they probably should have been changed because they were a bit offensive, these characters. But yeah, I think they're fine. These changes aren't that dramatic. They're fine. These small changes don't really impact the actual character of the game, and it's still Dead Rising at that, so I think that's fine. And if you want these original lines, play the original game. It's that simple. Also, I like the UI and the menus. It's simple and it keeps the style of the old games. 10 out of 10 from me. You can also skip parts of the game by using a fast forward feature, but I didn't really find myself using that this much because I actually wanted to play the game more than skipping past it. But towards the end, there are just completely massive gaps where there's nothing to do, so it was nice for them to implement that. But honestly, I think I would have rather them added more for us to actually do than actually adding this, but I think it's a fine addition, and if you just want to speedrun the game to get the worst ending, yeah, you can do that now. It's pretty funny. And honestly, I think that's all that needs to be mentioned for this remaster. It's pretty simple, and honestly, it's just Dead Rising again, with some changes that honestly improve the experience. So let's give it a cock rating. Gameplay, 9 out of 10. It's the perfect Dead Rising 1 game for me, as to me, to make this game even better, you would need to introduce stuff from Dead Rising 2. So I love the gameplay and the changes that were brought to the guns and everything like that. Big thumbs up from me. It's genuinely perfect. There's no way they could have made it better unless it was Dead Rising 2. Story, 10. I love Dead Rising's story with Frank and the mystery of the outbreak. It's so fun, and the 3-day structure, it's just a classic sort of system to me, and I think it's just so good, and with some pretty actual deep characters here, so go play it if you haven't. Graphics, honestly, a 9. I would give it a 10, but some parts of the game looked a bit bad to me, especially the opening. There's a lot of pop-in and clipping, and textures look a bit funny at times. So there are some parts that I think needed to be fixed. Also, hair looks a bit funny in this game, like it looks a bit patchy. But other than that, the entire game looks gorgeous, except for these few issues that I had, mainly pop-in and clipping and stuff like that. So if these were fixed, it would be a 10 out of 10 for me, genuinely. It's almost perfect looking game to me. Also, fire and explosions, they look terrible. Change them, simple thing. Music, 10. I love Dead Rising's music. It's amazing, from the licensed tracks to the original tracks. It all sounds great, and I love this game's music, and it's music that I still will be using in videos and stuff like that, just because of how good it sounds. Content, I'll give it an 8. The whole story mode is very good, and then having the unlimited mode, you know, it's an amazing thing, and having all the bosses and survivors and everything you can dick about with. It's super fun. It's a nice chunky game to chew on for a good while, but again, there's not like insane amounts of content. When you compare it to, again, like Dead Rising 2, which had like the side modes and the multiplayer modes, and Dead Rising 2 overall just had a bit more to do. Dead Rising 1 is a bit simple by today's standards, but it's still a chunky game, and I think the unlimited mode will get you a lot of playtime, especially if you go for 7-day survivor. Calculating the final score of the game, we get a 46 out of 50, or a 5 out of 5 game. Context, a 45 out of 50 or above for me is a 5 out of 5 game. It's not perfect, of course, but no game with a perfect score is perfect. To me, this game is perfect. Now, this lifting is mainly done by the original Dead Rising, which I believe is an all-time classic video game in general. Now, the remaster, do I think it lives up to that original game? Yes, I do. It doesn't change the experience enough to actually warrant a downgrade at all. I think it's a fine experience, but is it worth paying that extra premium price for this remaster? Honestly, I do. I think this upgrade is actually worthwhile. Yes, the voice changes are a bit miffy and a bit odd, and there are some things that they change from the experience which you could see as the negative, but to me, overall, it is a worthwhile experience and actually probably the better game overall. The only change I would want to be like reverted would be the voice cast. I do think that original voice cast is what made Dead Rising so iconic. But honestly, them changing it and actually going through the entire game and listening to the new voices, they're fine. It's not a big thing to get pissy about, and I'm not going to deduct it points for that. It's fine. Genuinely, it's fine from me. And the great thing about this game is that if you do not want to play this game and you want to play the original, you can still buy the original. So I don't think this game needs to be deducted points for that. It's not trying to replace it, it's trying to complement it, which I think is fine. And in my opinion, this game is the better modern experience for Dead Rising. It really is hard to sort of weigh up these two versions because you either get the older, cheaper one, which has got a bit of jankiness to it, especially on PC, with the controller support being god awful for things like, well, Dead Rising 2 specifically, which I know isn't Dead Rising 1, but both the games have sort of weird controller issues with like phantom dodging, where if you press too fast, you dodge when you're not meant to and you don't want to, and it can get you killed. It's annoying as hell. But this thing, perfect controller support. There was no issues I had with this game. Genuinely, it didn't crash, nothing like that. And the original Dead Rising Remastered does have some issues with it on PC especially. So I do think this is a better modern experience that is more robust and it just feels nicer to play. But again, it's more expensive. The original, often you can buy the original on discount, all 4 of the games, everything included, for like less than £30. So I do think you kind of just have to weigh it up what you want. But if you really want the perfect introduction to Dead Rising, honestly, I'd go with this remaster. I think it gives the perfect introduction. It's the most modern game. And if you're not interested in playing like Dead Rising 2, Dead Rising 3, you probably shouldn't play Dead Rising 4, but if you just want to play one game, I'd pick this up. But of course, if you want to play Dead Rising 2 off the record, 3, and if you're weird and want to play 4, pick up the bundle. It's cheaper and you'll get more games out of it. But honestly, if you want to play this game, play it, because we might get a Dead Rising 2 remaster and they might change more of that game up. And I think it would be nice. And I think this would be a good way to actually get Dead Rising back on the map. So if you're interested, I'd say pick it up at full price. I think it's worth it, especially if you haven't played Dead Rising. And even if you have played Dead Rising, it's Dead Rising. Dead Rising is always fun to replay. It's a great game. So yeah, that's my review for it. I think it's a perfect game. Honestly, I don't think they ruin it at all, but I think this is a fine remaster. It does what it needed to do. And for the price, I think it's a good price. Anyway, that's enough waffling from me. See you around. Crocodile.